This is White Lightning 777, and I'm here today to talk to you about a scam over the internet that has been gaining traction over the last few years. You have a bunch of people fraudulently calling themselves pure bloods. It's a name that makes no sense in terms of the modern world and is not scientifically justified. Now, far from being just a personal delusion, this is a form of quackery that even leads to rape, as well as financial exploitation. So let's first get started by talking about basic human biology. Now, this is something that should have been explained to you when you went to public school. This should have been taught to you in science, in sex ed, whatever. But because of the deplorable state of the schools and nonsense over the internet, it hasn't been. We have to understand that when a mother breastfeeds a child naturally, right? Okay, the antibodies from the mother go into the breast milk, and that is transferred to the baby because her body is supporting the complete and total physiological growth of that child. So if the mother is vaccinated against the disease or catches it naturally and forms immunity, or even just has, I don't know, immunity to pollen or something like that, though all those antibodies are in the milk and get transferred to the baby. Okay? Now, the problem arises when people erroneously think that reproduction works the same way. If a man and a woman come together to have a kid, the immunity, the cells from the father, don't transfer to the mother. Okay? Now think about it. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes no sense. They're already together. Okay? They're already living in the same area, which means that both of them are essentially, their immunological profile is from the same environment and is therefore identical. Okay? It makes no sense for the husband to transfer his immunity to his wife just because they're having a kid. And nature doesn't do that. The reproductive strategy for males, at least in mammals, it's more of an R versus a K strategy. The male produces, his incentive is to cause the most pregnancies that he can while expending the fewest resources in terms of his body. That means that only the essentials, the pH buffers, the sperm cells themselves, the sugar to feed them, and so on, are part of that seed. And if you think about it, it makes sense. The more chemicals that a man secretes along with that, the greater the immunological reaction is going to be of the wife, and that means more sperm cells are going to be killed before they reach the egg, and that means the chances for fertility drops. Now, there are men who have, through defects, they'll have problems with like hemorrhaging getting into the semen, or or other chemicals from the body getting into that. That if that becomes extreme enough, that has an adverse effect on fertility. And obviously, if a bunch of white blood cells from the husband get in there, they're going to attack the woman once they get into her body, and then her body's going to respond to that, and it's not going to, essentially it would just cause the wife to become allergic to the husband. So no, the immunity isn't whatever the man is immune to or not immune to, that immunity isn't going to transmit through the marital act. Now, if he has a virus, if he has an illness that's contagious, of course that can transfer, but that's different. The purebloods claim that somehow, if you as a man have antibodies, if you're vaccinated specifically, that somehow you vaccinated your wife. This is scientifically inaccurate. It's not true. Vaccines don't shed, viruses do. Vaccines don't. This is just not scientifically accurate. The purebloods also claim that somehow they don't have any antibodies to spike protein in their blood supply, just because they didn't get a shot, just because they didn't get a man-made spike protein or precursor injected into them. Again, this is complete nonsense. It is scientifically inaccurate. First of all, in nature, and this has been documented for close to a century, there are already 4 naturally occurring human coronaviruses, that most of which tend to cause common cold symptoms. Now, most common colds are caused by rhinovirus or adenovirus. There's only, out of the thousands of strains of virus for common cold, only 4 of them are coronaviruses, but those 4 do exist. So even if you never caught if you've ever had a cold, if you've had colds, a lot of colds as a kid, chances are you were exposed to one of these. The second thing is, we have to remember that Omicron and its descendant family is one of the most contagious illnesses known to man. See, as viruses, genetically unstable viruses, evolve, they become more contagious but less symptomatic. That means that as time goes on, your ability to just tell, well, I don't feel off, your ability to tell whether you have these goes down. And each time you're exposed to these, your immune system gets better at fighting it off, so you don't even have symptoms. The point is that by now, with an R naught of close to 15 or even higher, Omicron and its descendant viruses like cicada or whatever strains have basically infected the population. The entire population has been exposed to Omicron. Therefore, they have spike protein antibodies in their blood. Therefore, in terms of anybody living in the United States, anybody that's living in a suburban or urban area, or an area where they have regular contact with other people or drive on crowded roads, has been exposed. So this pure blood concept literally doesn't exist. In the United States, it is basically true that 99.999999999% of the population has antibodies to some kind of spike protein. And none of these coronaviruses have been associated with infertility or cancer. I mean, they cause respiratory illness when you become symptomatic. And if you're already immune to them and you're exposed to a type that's similar, you might not even have any symptoms at all. So even if you spent the $5,000 or $10,000 on a test and it says you have no spike antibody, that can change in a week. And if you're running around selling yourself as pure blood and ripping off women and having sex with all these women, you're going to get exposed. You're definitely going to get exposed to coronavirus pretty soon. It's a good way to catch it. And here's where the malicious part comes in. What woman would fall for the pure blood scam? It's going to be someone that has infertility problems. It's going to be someone who's had a miscarriage. It's going to be someone who has stillbirths. Women who have been emotionally devastated and not sensible enough to do their research are going to be vulnerable to quacks and charlatans selling their own bloodline as pure blood for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So you're literally committing adultery on your husband, or if you're single, sleeping with some strange man and then paying him thousands of dollars to inseminate you. And these pure blood scammers are complete human trash. You're out there selling yourself, as you're essentially prostituting yourself, sexually exploiting these women, and then turning around and demanding that they pay you thousands of dollars. They show these women fake papers saying they're pure blood, this and that. I mean, this is not just unethical, this is rape. If you are selling sex, I mean, prostitution's illegal, but if you're actually scamming people and selling sex under false pretenses or using psychological pressure to extract money and sex from women, you're a rapist. And you're also a quack. The people who do this belong in jail. And frankly, you know what? Hopefully they get beaten up and raped every day that they're in jail. They deserve it. The scammers doing this to vulnerable women or couples struggling with infertility issues, okay, or needlessly terrorizing people who've been exposed to spike protein simply for the cheap thrill of doing so, they all belong in jail. This pure blood thing is quackery. It is a scam. And so it's and the thing with quackery in general is that it's a problem. It's a more general problem. You'll have these quacks claiming, well, people had herbs and they didn't always have modern medicine. But you know what? They don't know how to use Google. Yes, for most of human history, shamans, witch doctors, and sorcerers were the healthcare system. And people lived about half as long as they do now. I mean, you know, the Roman Empire, you were old if you were 30 years old. Most people died before they were 40 years old. And infant mortality rates were through the roof. It was not unusual for, you know, less than half of your children to reach adulthood in the ancient world. You know, when witches and sorcerers were their only source of medical help. Now, were these witches and sorcerers capable of treating some diseases? Yes. Were those herbal medications better than nothing? Without a doubt, they were. But compared to modern medicine, they're vastly inferior. I mean, this is like comparing a chariot and a donkey, okay, to a modern car. Except it's your body and it's your health on the line. It's not just a question of the time it takes to get somewhere. You know, if you hate the modern world and you hate technology, go live in the third world. I don't want to hear your quackery. I don't need you preying upon, you know, people that are emotionally vulnerable. If you really think that the third world is better, go live there. But the quacks who push this third world sorcery and witchcraft type of medicine, okay, don't live in the third world. I mean, if you really want to learn about herbal medicine, I mean, you can go down to Haiti and learn from the voodoo doctors, or go to Africa and go live with the Maasai tribesmen, or go down to the Amazon, live with the Yanomamos. They'll teach you all about herbal medicine because they still use it. And they die young. Modern medicine and science have extended human life to the longest possible average in world history. Today, it's not unusual to live to be 80 to 100 years old. That was unheard of in the ancient world. And again, the pure blood type of quackery is part of a larger problem. We have to crack down on these quacks. No, we don't want to go back to not use cars, to go back to using donkeys and chariots. Okay? I tell you what, it's going to take you a long time to get somewhere, and the streets are going to start smelling really bad because those things poop a lot. You know, if you think that modern cars pollute, we should go back to chariots. Well, you know, nobody who's ever worked on a horse farm thinks that cars pollute less than horses. They don't. We must end quackery and put this pure blood scam to bed where it belongs. It is a social contagion, and it is used by criminals to exploit the most vulnerable, grief-stricken women in our country, and that are those who've lost a baby or who are struggling with infertility. The idea that these quacks would target such vulnerable people is repulsive and should turn the stomach of any red-blooded American. So no, you know, pure blood, I see somebody saying they're pure blood, I just assume you're a psychopath. I just assume you're a rapist and a psychopath or a quack. Okay? You don't make a good impression on me. This is White Lightning 777. Long live the Republic. Long live our empire. Pray for the God save the world.